a drive-by, and you have to order online, and there's a menu out on that table, a couple of menus, you want to take it with them. So.
Okay. I have no idea what I'm doing, but that's my normal status anyway. You what?
What are you preaching?
Who's preaching?
You're preaching, aren't you?
No.
You're still doing this early, Eddie's doing it now.
You what?
You're still doing this early, Eddie's doing it now.
Eddie's going to do announcements. Okay. Sharon was early. Y'all, that's the reason y'all are clapping.
So what we're going to do now?
What we're going to do now? Well, we can sing a song and wait on Eddie to show up, I guess. We're going to start with Eddie. Do announcements when he gets here. Eddie. There he is. Are you the chairman?
I just run my
Okay, Miss Penny sent her a t-shirt before I forgot. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, good to see each one of you here this morning. I'm not Brother Tim. I know we look a whole lot alike. We're about right here up. But y'all know, most of you know, him, Miss Melissa, the grandbaby, and both the children got China virus. And young ones is doing better. Brother Tim running a little fever yesterday, and Melissa had a couple of bad days, so y'all be sure to remember them in prayers. I know we have a lot of other folks around us. We all know somebody that's sick or having problems, whether it's from the virus or health issues or whatever. A bunch of us running around sick. It's good to see y'all here this morning. And Tom Wayne, would you open us in a word of prayer this morning?
Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you, Sam, Lord, we give come here this morning to listen to your word. Thank you for the ones that come to do our message today, Lord. We care. Be with those in the community, Lord, who got sick now. Lost loved ones, Lord. Be with the church community and family, Lord. Recover from the ill. This in your name.
And I will be serving as chairman and deacon for the next year. I'm blaming them other four guys in the room. It wasn't my fault. And we'll have a services tonight and have a business meeting after. Jeremy's going to come and speak, talk on his trip to Guatemala, mission trip after the psalm service. So, John, you just leave when you get done.
Well, you forgot about it, but I'm going to let Jim mention how many we did yesterday at the food pantry.
We did 736 yesterday. We shot 774 so far this month, and I'm sure we'll do over 800 in September and October, November, December, all the figures. So we'll have a bunch.
We were busy. And the fish fry was last night, and Jim said,
300.
huh?
300.
300. They ran out of fish about 6:30.
That's what
That's what you were told.
I got an official plan, but that's
Okay.
unofficial.
That's your understanding. Okay. One more?
I got charged.
Okay. We're just going to do this together.
Yes. Okay. It says, thank you from the bottom of my heart of Brother Tim and the men in Brotherhood for coming and building me a ramp. I have made it attempt each day to walk several times back and forth to help my legs and knees. I love my church family and feel all your prayers. I'm coming back one day. Miss Edie Gaines. And Brotherhood went to go to a ramp. I don't know how she was getting up down the stairs she had, but I think all the men come out and help that.
No other remarks, we will go forward. We're going to turn, I am, page 12, and praise him, Jesus, our blessed Redeemer, as you stand and we sing all three verses. Praise Him, Jesus, our blessed Redeemer. Sing the word, His wonderful love proclaim. Hail Him, highest angels in glory. Sing and honor, give His holy name. Like a shepherd, Jesus was born to children. In His arms He carries them all day long. Praise Him, tell of His excellent greatness. Praise Him, ever in joyful song. Praise Him, Jesus our blessed Redeemer. For our sins He suffered and bled and died. He our rock, our hope of eternal salvation. Hail Him, Jesus is crucified. Sound His praises, Jesus is Lord sorrows. Love unbounded, wonderful, deep and strong. Praise Him, tell of His excellent greatness. Praise Him, ever in joyful song. Praise Him, Jesus our blessed Redeemer. Heavenly portals, heaven's magazine. Jesus Savior, reigning forever and ever. Crown Him, prophet and priest and king. Christ is coming, over the world victorious. Power and glory, unto the Lord belong. Praise Him, tell of His excellent greatness. Praise Him, ever in joyful song. You may be seated as we go sing a song of the morning. Send the light that judge the gospel of God. We'll do it for a second. There's a flock ringing on the restless wind. Sing the light, let our souls to rest and let our souls to sing. Sing the light, sing the light, sing the
To all of y'all. I don't see y'all very much lately, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to do this. And I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to try to get started. Dear Lord, thank you for this great day you've given us, that we can come and worship freely here, Lord, and the beautiful weather you've given us, the fellowship and the friendship, Lord, and the worship songs we can sing. I just thank you so much for Brewer Baptist Church and what they do for me and my family. I ask you to help me now as I try to explain this burden that Brother Tim and I have shared on our hearts, Lord, and help me to explain it in a way that would maybe convey that, and just anybody out here who was listening, that they would see the need of the gospel around the world, and in our own community. Just forgive me for what I feel you just saying. All right, so I'm trying to do this straight from my phone because that's where all my pictures are. So we're going to try to run with a little technology for you. You ready, John? Okay. I want to do a little bit of just kind of talking at first, just to kind of explain how odd things are now compared to when we went. Because I took a picture in the airport in, I don't know, where, Birmingham or Atlanta, and there's this lady there who was sitting there, and she had a mask on, and she had gloves. And I was like, what a weirdo. She's got this, I mean, this global pandemic is not that big a deal. You know, you're talking about the first week of March. The world has changed so much since then, and little did I know, little did we know, one of the weirdest things and the funniest things about this whole trip was all of the corona stuff coming down the pipe was happening while me and Brother Tim were in Guatemala. Like, I think that's when Trump closed a lot of the borders, and we were, you know, it was coming down that he was going to do this and rumors for that, and he shut off Europe, and we were just waiting for him to say, you know, South America, Central America, no more planes coming in. So I was nervous about that. I wasn't as much worried about the Guatemalan people giving me the virus because we really hadn't made it over there then. But I remember thinking, I'm going to be stuck over here and I'm going to have to hike home because I'm not going to stay over here forever. And I started getting my map out, you know, which country goes. I was going to make it some kind of way. And I'll talk a little bit about that because a lot of the illegal immigration we have, we always say Mexico this, Mexico that. A lot of the illegal immigration that we have is actually from Guatemala. The Guatemalan people, there's a pipeline that brings those people up here. If you, I don't know if it's going to connect, John, I may have to move a little further, a little closer to you. But a lot of the Guatemalan people, if you go to the Mexican restaurants around and a lot of the workers around, they're actually not from Mexico. A lot of them are from Guatemala. And they actually have some tensions with Mexico, and they're Mexico's southern border with some of the restrictions because the Guatemalan people were trying to get up to Mexico to come up to here, and then they were having some sort of drama with the Mexican border police on the south side. So it's just interesting dynamics as far as it goes. I think I'm connected now. All right. It may not connect from this distance, so we may have to go to plan B. If it doesn't work, John, a while back, I sent you I shared a Google album in Google Drive. You can't find that. They're not in order on that, but we can at least get through it.
Let's try this.
All right. The thing that I like about what me and Brother Tim did was, Brother David came and spoke to us about a year ago. It's getting really close to being a year ago now. It may have been October or November, but it was right here in the fall season. And Brother David is actually was a pastor in North Mississippi at Auburn Baptist Church and some other churches around. And he actually was in Tennessee at the time. He just had resigned his church a month or two before he came here and partnered with these volunteers called E3 Volunteers. And the E3 Volunteers, they're not a mission organization like you would think, like the North American Mission Board, where they're sending missionaries to us. Their primary thing was taking home churches in Mississippi or Alabama or in the United States and partnering them with specific churches on the mission field, especially Guatemala. That was his area of emphasis. So I kind of like that aspect of it, because in that aspect of it, you're partnering with the local church, because the local church knows what's going on instead of a stranger from the outside coming in and going street walking and preaching to people on the corner. Going to churches who actually already have their footprint in that community, to where that pastor's been praying, that pastor's local, that pastor knows people, and all these things can come together in that way, so that you're not just shooting shots in the dark. But I'm not here on behalf of E3 Volunteers. I'm just here to say I went and I have this story to tell. And I'm going to read one scripture, and then we'll go from there. I'm not going to preach a sermon with some points, but this is a scripture I bet none of y'all have ever heard before. It's the Great Commission. Maybe you've heard it before. And this is the most stereotypical I went on a mission trip verse there could ever be. But there's a reason for that. It's the most clear example of where Christ told us what we are to do, not just at home, but in the world. And this is just straight out of Matthew. This is Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. This is my personal thinking about it. And again, I'm not claiming to be a great missionary. And I may even claim that I do a great job in my own community in Morville and Brewer and Shannon. But I do feel that our job as Christians is to reach the world. Now, I was telling Brother Tim this, I think that if you do only foreign missions as a church and ignore your community, you're only getting it half right. But I also think if you just minister to your community and ignore the rest of the world, you're still only getting it half right. So I think there is a balance to this. I'd say about a year ago June, Mallory and I read this book that kind of challenged me in my faith. And one of the things it said to do was, if you want to be claim to be active in your faith, if you're not really reading your Bible, then you're not doing your job, because you're not in your faith. You're not reading instructions. You're not putting His Word in your heart, letting it change your life. All these things. And it challenged you to read the Bible through in a year. Now, I'm not saying you've got to read the Bible through in a year or you're going to hell. But that's something that challenged me. So Mallory and I did that. We tried to read the Bible through in a year, in 2019 to 2020. And one of the things I would have said is that you need to be engaging the community for the gospel, and you need to engage the world for the gospel. The author recommended that you try to do some sort of mission out of your comfort zone. Because I think that, especially in my life, church has been a comfort zone for me. I grew up in church. My brother said the other day, I went to church 9 months before I was even born. And church has been my comfort zone. Like, sometimes I have a hard time telling the Walmart clerk about the gospel. But if they'll come sit in my Wednesday night class, I can talk to them about it for an hour, because it's my comfort zone. And one of the things I was challenged by being a more radical Christian was to get out of my comfort zone to a place to where the gospel was still needed. And the good thing about being out of your comfort zone is that I feel like I'm in control of things. Whenever my youth are in front of me, I can control this, I can control that, I can do all these things, I can. When you're out of your comfort zone, you really get to see how much God can work. And it really ministered to my soul. I'm not going to lie to you. The first night in Guatemala, in that strange hotel room with, everything was different. We had a nice hotel, and it wasn't what I was used to being as a nice hotel. When Mallory and I go to Jackson and Memphis for our shows, it wasn't what we call a nice hotel. And there's, you know, the power went out one time, not because of anything special, just they just had a power surge. Just things that you don't expect day to day here. You never knew about the water, and they had all these instructions about you. I was nervous. I was out of my comfort zone, and I did a lot of praying that week. But Brother David and his team, and there's another guy, if I get the pictures of work, his name is Brother Kevin Cruz. He's a young guy, he's in his mid to upper 20s. They really made us feel at home. They had a plan for us, they had a place for us. And if we go as a church to Guatemala, it'd be a little different because they took us on what they kind of call like a, I don't know what they call it, it's kind of like a tour where we didn't go to a church to do a lot of ministry. We just kind of went and met pastors. So in the 4 or 5 days we were there, what Brother Tim and I did, we met 4 different pastors from 4 different churches that did a lot of traveling back and forth. And we visited one school, which, again, if I get the pictures of work, it's really interesting. It's the actual school that we sent our money to. You know, when Brother David was here, we took a love offering, and we had some donations come in for the next few weeks after that. And we actually got to go to that school and meet some of the students. Because, I mean, they have to buy things, supplies, and this and that and other. But the big thing there is you have to pay tuition to go to school after like the 8th or 9th grade. And most of those are private schools. They don't have K through 12 free public education like we do. It stops. And you can sometimes get into public schools, but your best avenue is private schools. And their private schools are not like TCBS type private schools. They are a little better funded than the public schools. So anyway, that's where some of our money went to. All right, let's see if we're working now. Oh, we are working. Good. That's my plane ticket. I took that for my sake. And again, this is not a sightseeing tour I'm going to give you, but it is a beautiful country. All right, but there's a lot of scenery I want to get to. And this is interesting. I don't know if you see all of it. That's a volcano. We were actually in, I didn't bring a map, but we were actually in, I'd say, you fly in, I'm going to do a kitty diggity. If you're here, if the United States up there, you come down Mexico, Guatemala's kind of right here. And it's not square, but it's not long. It's kind of evenly spaced out, the way I remember. And down here in the bottom left corner is Guatemala City. That's their headquarters. That's everything, the airports, all these things. We were actually, at the bottom of this here, we were up here almost to the northwest corner. Now, it kind of did go some more. There was police and things like that. The place where we ministered, we flew into Guatemala City. Guatemala City, I don't know if I can say it right. But we actually spent most of our time in this place called, don't quote me this, it's called Ketetalnini. But the locals called it Shela. It's actually X-E-L-A, Shela. That's the way they pronounce it. Because that was their old traditional name for it before their government changed or whatever. But anyway, a lot of beautiful scenery, but that's not, again, it was situated between 2 volcanoes. One was called the water volcano, one was called the fire volcano. Something about the water volcano wasn't any different from the other volcano, but it had erupted sometime in the past and it was cold. It got cold, water had built in a lake in it, and then when it erupted again, everything flooded because it had water built up in it. So they called it the water volcano. And we actually got to see a little bit of the puff of smoke. Like it wasn't like a smoke like you see on, you know, a kids show, but the sky was a little dusky a few days where it was kind of a little bit erupting. Now this one, you're not going to appreciate this. But the first day we were there, we drove for hours. I feel like we drove forever to get from the the city part of Guatemala City to the place, our mission field, which I don't know how many hours it was, several hours away. And it wasn't just that it was several hours away, it just wasn't there. It was one of the best roads, they said, in Guatemala. But it wasn't the best road like we would think. It was up and down and curved around these mountains. And if I get this to work for you, there's huge school buses is their public transportation. They'll get a school bus from the United States, drive down there, and I'm talking about they will trick it out. They'll put horns on it, they'll paint it every color of the rainbow, they chrome it out. It's their public transportation. They call them chicken buses. Well, again, you can't really see it in this video. It's kind of hard to see, but this is a typical street for them. And this is not me wiggling. This is how bumpy the road was. This is just a side street for them. What's happening in this video here is we're lost, okay? Brother David is getting better at his Spanish, but he's not proficient at it. And he's talking to this guy, and I wish I could hear it. And this was after about 3 or 4 minutes of this conversation where I didn't know what they were saying. And this guy's just pointing and all this stuff, trying to tell him where to go. Brother David's just kind of, he didn't know where we were at. Brother David didn't know where we were at, and the guy didn't know where we were at either. He should have talked to us for 10 minutes like he knew. So this is first day stuff. So we were a little bit nervous about this. And this one, they have the best bakeries ever. It was just their restaurant. We ate at it every morning, you know, served breakfast. But downstairs was a bakery to it. So I had to send them out these videos of these pastries and stuff. Again, that's not what y'all think. All right, this is the first church we went to. Now, you can't tell it in this picture, and this picture's not going to do it justice, but this is an alleyway. If you've ever been to, the only alleyways I'm really familiar with are the ones right there by the courthouse in Tupelo, because, you know, we don't have a lot of skyscrapers and alleys and stuff. But you know how if you've ever been to Crave or in those places right there, that little skinny alleyway, well, that's kind of like double the size of this alleyway. Like you're going down this little tiny road that you have to nearly stop to get two cars to pass. And then you turn into this road where there's not two cars to pass. Like this is our truck, the red truck right here. This is deceiving. Brother Tim is really close to the other wall to where, you know, there's not any room between him and this wall on the right. This wall on the right versus the wall on the left. And you're just like, how is this a church? This looks like a church. This is just a gate. But when you walk through this gate, it opens up into this huge courtyard. It's really interesting. This church actually was blessed in how much they actually had as far as space goes, because space is very, very limited here. This is one of their Sunday school rooms. None of these churches were wealthy. None of them have nuclear facilities that we have. So don't get that in picture in your mind. But this church did very well with the things that they had. This is their Sunday school, one of their Sunday school rooms. And if you can see some of them, I'm going to slow down on a few of these places. This is their sanctuary. And it's a very interesting setup they had. They've got these big plastic pillars and things. And these are their pews, if I can get it to work. Their pews are these plastic, I don't know what you call them, patio chairs. Okay, and you'll see a picture in a second. They'll kind of, I can explain it. They have beautiful chandeliers. Randomly, every church has a really beautiful chandelier. But if you see this chair here, you see how it's doubled. Okay, well, this brother, I think his name was Brother Miguel, this is Brother Kevin, they're also in these single chairs. And they didn't tell me and Brother Tim to our face, but the missionary did, Brother David, he told us, he said, look, you need to double the chairs. He said, when the gringos come and sit in the chairs, they keep breaking the legs of the chairs. So they made me and Brother Tim double our chairs. They didn't make us. They were very humble and kind. But the missionary made us say, look, don't come in here and break their church chair. So we had to double our chairs. And it still felt a little, I mean, I'm not skinny by any means, but I was touching both sides of that chair. But this is the first pastor we went to, and I got his name, because they're all obviously not my native tongue. This was actually Judah Baptist Church. It's Iglesia Bautista Juda, J-U-D-A, Juda, Judah Baptist Church. And they had a really good setup. Now, again, the goal of E3 missions, what they do is they find a church, they're partnering with the church so that you send your money there, you get pictures back, you can visit there. It's not, you're just not throwing money into the void saying, hope this goes to missions, hope this goes to missions. It's going to people that, if you take a trip, you know those people because, you know, it'd be like a church in New York sending money to Brewer. We're not just a random group of people. We're here, we're established, we're doing things. So if they want to come visit us in 5 years, everybody might not still be here, but a lot of the same, it's a relationship you can build. So this was that church, and they have lots of things going on. I really, really liked, as far as the church, our job was to go down there and see if there's somebody we could partner up with and we could get a burden from. I really like this church. Now, they had some administrative issues with the pastor where, I don't know if it was, he might not still be there. I'm not sure his deal with that, but again, it's been 6 months ago, so a lot of things have changed since then. He was a really good man. He was a church planter. He actually, I think, was even a teacher in the community. The big thing for them is schools, and they told us basically that if you're a gringo, which I mean, they didn't call us gringos. Brother David loved to call himself a gringo. I don't know why. He just loved to call us. If you're an American, you had an instant step into the school. Now, their schools are not like our schools. They're government schools, but separation of church and state is not a thing for them down there. Which is a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is they're a very Catholic society, just sort of like Europe was when the Pilgrims came over. The Catholic Church and the Church of England, the Pilgrims and the American founders came over here to get away from that because the church was trying to tell the government what to do, because it was now we have the opposite. The government's trying to tell the church what to do. But they don't have that concept there. So it doesn't matter if we're Christian or sharing the gospel or not. If we're Americans, they said we have easy access to almost any school, and we can witness the children there. We can do day camps and Bible schools. They're very open to those things. People would just take pictures of us as we walk down. I told somebody, Will Watson, I think it was, because, you know, me and him are about the same height. We both got tall brothers, but some kind of way we got the short genes. But I told him in Guatemala, I felt like a rich giant. And over here, I feel like a poor midget most days. But I felt like a rich giant over there, and they just looked at us, and they took pictures of course, Brother David. He's 6 foot something tall, so he was, you know, we got a lot of looks for him, but that's a good thing in a way, because it allows us to get into a lot of places that maybe we can't even get into in Shannon, because of, you know, we can't just go to Shannon and say, hey, brother, we're going to have a 2-day Bible school, and, you know, we're going to talk about Noah's Ark. We can't do that here, but we could there. So that's an interesting thing for me, because my mentality is I'm more of a children and youth directed person. So this is their offering plate. I thought it was really interesting. This is their offering plate. We need to step up a little bit, I guess. These are hand woven, and of course there's a lot of shoe crafts, a lot of hand crafts. That's a lot of their markets they do. They always wanted us to take pictures of the things they had been doing in their community. And this is just some of their kids' ministry stuff. This is Judah Baptist Church. And then this is very, very unique. Now, I've never been to a big city much, so it may be like this in New York and everywhere, but there's just not a lot of grass and real estate in Guatemala, in this Shela city. Like, you were concrete. I mean, you might have some gravel and some dirt, but everything was street and building. There was just a lot of open space. So for this church to have this open courtyard, that was an attraction for one, because they could have a place for kids to come play soccer or whatever, a space that they weren't all cramped up. Another thing is they had room to expand. So this was very, very unique that they had this wide open space. And I'm telling you, this came out of this little attic. You're walking down by Crave, and you're cramped up, and you can touch both walls, and all of a sudden it just opens up into this. And I'm going to show you this probably more than one time, but you can't see as good in this picture. Well, these are the rednecks from Tennessee and Raymer. They're, of course, examining the cane poles. Brother Tim, Brother Dave were just stupefied by this huge bamboo cane. I had to get a picture of that. This one, we went all the way from Brewer in Mantasset, Mississippi, and we found the closest thing we could find to a Walmart we went to. So this is, Walmart actually owns 2 or 3 of their companies down there. They don't say Walmart on the sign, but Walmart's bought 2 or 3 of the biggest retailers down there. So you can go to that Maxi Dispensia and buy great value water, great value products. So that was really interesting. And I wish you could hear what I said right here. I ain't got the sound hooked up, but I was making fun of Brother Tim for their Walmart. This is our second place we went. This was eventually this place called Totonic. I'm not even trying to say it. It was a different city. It was close. Now, when I say it's a different city, it was probably as far a distance from the middle of the big city we were in, Shela, as Shannon is from Saltillo. I mean, it was close. But it was an hour plus drive. And it wasn't like you're in town and then you finally get out of town and you're on the highway. It was nothing but side streets the whole way there. And they were like, oh yeah, this is the main road. It takes you 400 miles that way. I was like, this road? And it was these little tiny roads, and it was weaving in and out. You never got out of the city to get into the city. They just changed the city you're in. But this plaza here, interestingly enough, that big, well, you kind of see it. There's always a big town square, and on the town square, if you see, there's a huge Catholic church building. The way their city was set up, of course, when the Spanish came in, they were Catholic, and they founded these cities, and their center of government in the city was on a square built in front of the Catholic church. That was something you see in most of the cities. And which again is a good thing in a way and a bad thing in a way, because they're not particularly evangelical in the Catholic Church, but at the same time they do have that familiarity with Jesus Christ if you just actually tell the gospel. And they said they have, like, the way I look at it, it's kind of like Railroad Festival. You know how at the Amory Town Square they got all the booths set up and you can buy things? Well, they do that kind of thing almost every week in this place where we're sitting here. It's a huge marketplace for them. But this is a really, really nice pasture, and this is probably the nicest church we went to. This was Horeb Baptist Church. It says Iglesia Evangelica Bautista, so I guess that means Iglesia's church. So it's Evangelical Baptist Church. Horeb Baptist Church is what it is. And they had, this when I say this is the nicest church, you try to think of the nicest church in Lee County and the things that we would have. But this is the nicest church I saw in our visit there. And they had a really nice setup in their sanctuary, but everything else is still like they don't have running water in some of the places they're building. Some places they do. They don't have all their electricity in some places they're building. So we're spoiled. I felt very humbled in our excess and things we take for granted. But and they did the best they could with what they did. They had a really, really bright paint, some really beautiful everything they could make for a little amount of money, they did it to make the Lord's house as nice as they could make it. This was unique too. They had pews. Most of them didn't have a lot of pews, and they had a really nice setup on their stage. Really, you can't really see it. It's a glass pulpit. It was really fancy glasswork. And like I said, this was the more rich church, and they still were. I mean, they don't have the stuff we have, but it was very nice. And again, this is like the most beautiful mural they had on their thing here. But it was just paper cut out. It was almost like a Bible school craft. But they had painted their wall bright color. They had put their letters up there, and they had made it as pristine as they could. And I really appreciate that. There's so many times I think that I just walk right by something in the parking lot needs some trash to be picked up because, somebody else did it. They were really proud of what they had, and they did the best they could. And of course, if you can read Spanish, that's Mark 9:23. I can't read it to you. Again, this is an example of a typical street. I mean, this is our vehicle, and then the next vehicle. These are not even, this is not traffic, this is parking. So this is a 2-lane road as it is, and then they park on the side of the road. So, I mean, you have to take a lot of turns. Guatemala traffic was something else. This is the one I really want to show you. This is just a side city street, and you just go and you're looking down this little alley and you think to yourself, this is not some place I want to go. No, there's a church down there. The church is down through the alley behind the main buildings, and then it opens up into another courtyard. And this was probably, I'd say, the poorest church we went to. It opened up into this small courtyard here. I can't remember now what they said this was, but their security system, you can't see it there, you might see it again, their security system is these brick walls with shards of broken glass poking up out like you would a barbed wire fence, but they didn't have a barbed wire fence. It was just shards of broken glass into the concrete so people wouldn't climb over. But this was Nuevo Pacto, New Covenant Baptist Church. Now, this church at this time, I'm not sure they didn't have a pastor, or he was just kind of a new pastor, but the guy we actually met with was the deacon. And this is the most precious thing to me out of this one was that this church, again, was very poor. But look at their sanctuary. They got the chairs sitting on the side of the wall, but they don't have, a lot of these churches had nice sound systems and a lot of instruments because they're very musical. This is cleared out, this is their stage. Very recently, before we went there, their church was broken into, and they had everything stolen. Like everything that was of value on their stage, it was completely stolen. So, but they were still meeting. I think they were meeting several. And another thing I haven't emphasized, they do something every night or every day. The pastor does. It might be children's missions on Monday and women's missions on Tuesday, and they are very, very active because that's their thing. They don't have 75-inch plasma TV to go home and sit in front of. They're actually let their Christian life be their life, which is humbling again for me. Of course, they do have sports, and they had a professional soccer team there that me and Kevin, the young guy, we were trying to sneak out one night and go see them, but we couldn't get tickets to it. But soccer is king. It's king down in that part of the world. But this is their facility they have, and it looks bad, but it's attractive in some ways because they have this space that's rare in this highly dense populated area, and they have these basketball goals. Because they don't play basketball, they take that concrete court and they play soccer. But these, and I should have brought it, but this poor church, poor by their standards, poor church that had just had all of their expensive stuff stolen, they were the only church that gave us a gift. They made sure to give us handcrafted, I wouldn't say it was like a coffee mug, but it was made out of, they fired it, they molded and fired it themselves, and it was ceramic, and it had an owl, and I think Lucy likes owls, so I had it. This is, again, their security system. You can kind of see it, all the broken glass and stuff, because they were being picked on in their community. They had, what little nice things they had were stolen recently. Now, this is actually a view from that same church, the wall. Oh, here's a school. I'm talking about right next to the church is a school. So this is just a place that they're just saying, look, if we could just get some help. And they do things for the community already. I'm not saying they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs waiting for us. But this is a church where they have kids around them all the time. And if you get the community, our Bible school, a lot of times, the parents will just drop a kid off and go on. And we do try to make connections with our kid that comes to Bible school and bring their family to church. But these people are not just throwing their kids away. If you can get the kids in, you're going to get the families in. This is the schoolyard they had right here. You see soccer and basketball things. This is the bathroom. I actually use this bathroom. This is their bathroom. It was an outhouse. No plumbing. Latrine, I think is what they called it. But this is in the church courtyard. They didn't have running water at all. And they had toilet seat in one of them. One of them was just a hole cut in the plank of wood. And it was deep down there, and you want to fall in. But we did use this bathroom. All right, I don't want to take a picture of here. Now, again, I'm a southerner from the flatlands of Mississippi. We were up in the mountains there. We went, I'm not sure, I guess Guatemala City's got to be on sea level because it's on the ocean coast or close to the ocean coast. We weren't on sea level anymore. We were high up in the mountains. And this is not biblical or anything to do with my stuff. But you ever see the difference between like an LED light with that white light versus these soft yellow lights? Everything up there was like they had those white lights on because you're so much higher in the altitude that the sun didn't filter out the same color. So it was really weird. It was like somebody turned on a fluorescent light everywhere you went. It was very beautiful, and we had good weather there most of the time we were there. But it was a little different for me. Now this is the one I really want a picture of. Every one of their cities has some sort of roundabout traffic thing. We made fun of Kevin because he couldn't say roundabout. He's a native Guatemalan. He spoke really good English, but he was a native Guatemalan. He made fun of our redneck accent saying roundabout. You know, like I don't know what the real word is for, where you come in from this way, this way, this way, this way, and there's not a red light, you just go around the circle until you get to the exit you want to go on. Well, they always had some sort of statue. And this was a very revered, renowned statue for them. Okay, so they're very Catholic. But they also have a lot of their ancient Mayan paganism. Like whenever the explorers first got there, you see the pictures of the human sacrifice and the pictures we depict when we study about Central American and Mexico and their religions, or even Native American culture, how they have these gods and these huge worship centers where they have piles and piles of bones and stuff. Well, this is one of their ancient warriors that they used to celebrate because they're a very prideful city and that they have been Europeanized in a way, but they still hold on to that heritage of just paganism. That's what it is. So there's Christians, they're Catholic. There's a lot of Mormons over there, surprisingly enough. The Mormons have done their job trying to evangelize, and then there's a lot of people, especially out of the big cities, that still hold on to their ancient Mayan beliefs, their ancient Mayan religion. This was a monument to it. And you can't tell, but this is a very, very impressive and important statue for them. And I tried to get, there's 17 pictures of it because I couldn't get a picture out of my window. So Kevin just took as many pictures as he could. Another interesting thing at their mall, they had handicap parking and also credit mom parking. Had a store there. So I thought that was nice. Again, the volcano. But I want to show you these churches. I took a lot of pictures of the food. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. I took a lot of pictures of the food. Brother David said, if you come, you're going to sleep good, you're going to eat good. And their food was very inexpensive compared to what we will pay here. We ate really good. I went all the way to Guatemala and everybody's staying. All right, you need to take some Mylana or some Tums. I think you need to take this and that because you just don't know about their food. Very first thing I had was some sort of linguine pasta and some Alfredo sauce, like I said, an Italian restaurant. So it wasn't all native food. All right, this is the one I wanted to get to. And I'm going to try not to talk forever here. But this is the church that Brother Tim and I really connected with, I think, the most, because they were a country church. And we could really relate to them. And they were very, at first it was weird, because the deacon did most of the talking. And the pastor was kind of very laid back. But what we found out was, oh no, this is one of those churches where the pastor's just a figurehead, and the church is telling what to do. We were worried about that at first. But what it is this pastor was old, he was getting not good health. And what it actually, he had been there for 20 years, and he had won this brother to Christ and mentored him. This was Paul and Timothy. This wasn't his balance. This was a Paul and somebody he had brought along and was ready to, be in a position of leadership. They had a really sweet relationship. But this was the Lily of the Valley Baptist Church. I took a picture of their sign. I'm not going to try to say the Spanish without looking at it. But this was actually weird. It was actually in the valley of the volcano. Like we were out in the country and you could see it. When I say out in the country, I don't mean like, there's some fields on the side. I'm talking about the road stopped. It was dirt and it was, if the water was running down through there, the road was gone. I mean, it was just gone. Everywhere you looked, there was a field of dirt where they were growing. They weren't growing it to sell. This was what they were growing to eat. And there was more than one mule and ox drawn farm equipment. They didn't have John Deere's out here. This was very, very primitive. And I say that to say, look how beautiful of a facility. What I'm trying to say is they are proud of what the Lord's done for them, and they don't take it for granted. Not that we don't. We take care of our stuff. I'm not saying we don't take care of our stuff. But me, Jeremy Haynes, I personally take for granted that I come in here, and right now my fingers are a little bit chilly because the air conditioner working so good. One of the great needs they have in this church is they want to have to install a drop ceiling because they don't have heat. So whenever it gets to the colder times of year, the elderly population, they don't come. They can't come because it's too cold to be there. And a drop ceiling and some more insulation will help them be able to heat their facility. And that's just something that I don't think about here. But they're trying their best to make it work. Now, I got a good picture of this, and I don't know where, but this is their offering plate, and this was the funniest thing to me. This is a coronavirus offering plate right here. It's an offering plate on a stick. I don't know if you can see it. But that's about a 6-foot thing, so you just walk down and just pass it out. That's what we need to go to if your box doesn't work out. Just offering by distance. But I try not to take a picture of it because they didn't think it was funny. So I didn't want to embarrass them, but I thought it was funny. But this is their pastor with the hat on. And this brother right here, his name was Brother Joaquin. And he actually had spent some time in America. He's been up, I think he's been in New York some, and he lived there for several years. One of the things they do, and again, I'm not here for politics. I know all about our immigration issues and things like that, but it does put a different perspective. We think these illegal aliens are coming in, and they are. But a lot of it is they're going here because their family lives in this town with the mule. If the mule gets sick, they don't eat that. And they're coming here to make as much money as they can and send it back. So again, that's not the government's problem, that's the church's problem. If we can get a church in that community and share the love of Jesus and get those people saved and pour the resources we have that we waste and argue about all the time into some places that really need it, then I think that'll be a blessing to them and us. This is one of their Sunday school rooms. The reason I touched on these pictures is if we did partner with this church, they have some things that fit us, like building a porch or building a ramp for Miss Edie. This church needed things like they went through a wall right where Brother David is standing to make this into 2 rooms instead of 1. I can't build a wall very well, but we got some very handy men in this church that, again, I'm not saying we have to go to this church, but this is an example of the works we can do. It's not going to be all going down there and stand on the corner and preaching with the interpreter. There's work that we are capable of doing if we choose to partner with these places. This is kind of a storage area here they got on the side. What they want to do is, I wish I could hear what I was saying. I don't know what I was saying, but I'm sure I was making something. But this is their storage facility, but what they want to do is enclose this and make it into more Sunday school rooms because they're matched to capacity. They want to have a Sunday school wing in their church. This was their kitchen. And I'm trying to pause and zoom in on some of these spots if we can. This is their stove. This is some cinder blocks with a place for a little campfire around it. This is interesting too. This was their fuel source, a bunch of corn cobs, and I'm going to talk about that more in just a minute. In these fields and stuff they did, it really got back to, I think, there's all their extra corn cobs, there's their big pots and kettles. What they do is they'll take this corn, and those are bags of corn. They'll make it into anything. They might just cook corn, but they'll grind it up and make it into all kinds of cornmeal or whatever, whatever you want it to be. And they'll cook on these big pots, and that's how they feed their church. They feed their community. But the interesting thing, this church was so poor that this church had these bags of corn. Now, the church didn't have a farm. The people had farms. But these churches had tons of corn because the way these people paid their tithe was they didn't give them 10% around the check. They would bring a tenth of their corn. They literally paid their tithes in a tenth of their first fruits of all their increase. Like, I've been reading through Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. The way Moses told them was like, look, you get your crop, you bring the first fruits, and you give it to the Levites and all this stuff. That's literally what they were doing. They were literally taking their farm product, and that's all they had. And they gave it to the church. And the thing about it was, this church and these people in this community were feeding the community around, the hungry mouths of the community around, with the corn that was given as a tithe. They didn't have enough money to enclose their storage facility, but they took the tenth they had and fed it out there. It was very, again, humbling for me. But they made the best of it. And they didn't complain. They weren't giving us a sob story. The only sob story we got were from Brother David, the American gringo who understands our churches and understands their churches. He would tell us, look, they don't see it as the way we see it. They don't know what we've got and what we can give them. Because I'm talking about very little amounts of money. could change these churches. And Brother David had a note, of course, he goes to all these places. This church had the nicest bathrooms in Guatemala. And they did. They had nice plumbing, they kept it clean. The one I went to didn't have a light, but it was daylight. But it may have a light, just went home. But they were just they were proud of what the Lord had given them. They did the best they could with it. But yeah, this is their cooking area and their ventilation area. That's their ventilation vent up there that holds us long. But this was a very, very sweet congregation and church. And again, as you hear the sound, they insisted that we pray before we left. And it was one of those old country prayers. They were all praying at the same time. So Brother Tim was praying, and I want to say Brother David might have been praying, and Kevin's over there trying to do his best to translate. And the two pastors, deacon, they were all, it was the Lord didn't need an interpreter, and you could feel the Spirit in that room, in that little bitty room in Guatemala. There it is right there. I don't know if I can see it. If I get into it. Over here. That's the title of the church. But this is the church area right here. These are the streets. And Iglesia Bautista Libro de los Valles, or something. Lily of the Valley is what it says. Lily of the Valley Baptist Church. I thought it was a very good name because it was the lily in that volcano valley for sure. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, this is just the people's yards right next to it. I was just videoing around and I got a zoom in of a very beautiful place. But there was a cow that stared at me. I didn't realize at first it was down one of these little alleys. Okay, this is the one I want to show you here. This is what they call a chicken bus. This is just the one that was standing still long enough for me to get a picture of it. But I'm talking about decked out, chromed out, and there's handles on the back of these things. You can't see all of them because they didn't have a reverse camera. They had a buddy hanging off the back of that thing, and they were working these through these little small alleys and stuff. And he would hang off that side and point at the mirror, and he would say, "Come on back," or whatever. And he would jump out, and he would direct traffic. He would stop traffic. He had to, so those buses could get in and out where they wanted to. And then next thing you know, you hop back on like a garbage man. They was gone. Not even nothing. He was just hanging on, talking to his buddy. No big deal. Their transportation was a little different, but we went to this place. It was called The Last Goodbye. And it was in the middle of Guatemala. It wasn't close to the border, but it was a place where these families would come and load up these buses to try to make their trek to get to the United States. And they called it The Last Goodbye because there were so many obstacles to get there. Here's a fellow. He is whipping this mule, not in a condemning way, but he had a rope. He was just popping this way, pop this way. He was steering that thing like a zero-turn mower. He had that mule trained, and it was taking his corn back to the house, I guess. This is all that's in the place. More food. They had a lot of food that was not, they said don't eat the fresh produce. This place was safe for us to eat. This is one I want to show you too. You can't see it good, but can y'all see what those kids have in their laps? That's Operation Christmas Child boxes. So we actually literally visited some churches where the boxes get sent to. And it was pretty cool to see how excited they were. And I mean, there's tons and tons of children there. A lot of these churches would be a 200-member church, and 120, 130 of those would be children. I'm talking about the people, the adults that were doing whatever they're doing, were doing a lot of work. They weren't just, having a little Bible study in their backyard for two people that they liked. They were engulfed with children who needed the gospel. Last place, we went, Iglesia, this was Patmos Baptist Church, Patmos. Thought it was interesting too. There's some more Operation Christmas Child, Samaritan's Purse boxes they gave us. Probably showed us. This brother, he actually had cancer. Brother Juan, he had cancer. He didn't have to go to different places to get treated for his cancer, so he was kind of struggling at the time. But never complained. Again, we would not have known that if Brother David and Brother Kevin didn't force us to, force the truth on us, because he never complained. We did get up to a scenic route. This is the city of Xela, X-E-L-A, that we spent our time in. And again, that might not be impressive to you, because you may have been to New York or Chicago, but I haven't. That's a lot of folks in a little bitty space. But we were way up on top of this mountain, which took a long, long time to get. But it was very beautiful, and they had the cross looking over the valley there. And I want to show you these pictures of this school. This is Brother Miguel. I think his name's Miguel. He didn't talk much. He didn't speak in English. But he was like our guide everywhere we went. And he didn't work for the mission team. He was kind of like the director of the Mississippi Baptist Association, the Guatemala Baptist Association. He was like the local Southern Baptist director guy. And everywhere we went to these churches, these pastors would just come up and give him a hug. Everywhere we went, I don't know what they were talking about. They basically told us, he used to be a pastor for a long, long time there. And now he's retired and he's doing what he's doing. God has gotten the ministries and gotten the missionaries around being a director. But he founded these churches. There was more than one of those pastors who grew up in his church, got saved, got called, and went out and planted their own churches. He was the Paul. I mean, I already used that once, but he really was the Paul for this area. All these little Timothys he had around. Brother Miguel, he's going to have crowns laid up for him because he was just this little unassuming man, but he loved the Lord, and he loved the people. This is Brother Kevin, of course, Brother David Singleton. And there's some good-looking guy there in green. I can't remember what his name is. This is our last day. We went and did a little sightseeing, but I want to show you the school. You just gotta, some folks just gotta watch carefully. You just never know what they're gonna do. And again, that was back in the day when you could touch stuff without gloves on, because now you can't. This is the school. It says right here, like primary school and maybe like a middle school. And this was a wealthy school. They had computers. I'm not talking about wealthy like real wealthy. I'm talking about like they thought that this was a little nicer school. But they were very religious in their school. They didn't have any problem sharing the gospel or having Noah's Ark or the rainbows or whatever. But this is the school where actually our money went to. And we're going to get to meet these kids. This is their chapel. This guy, he killed me. He took a picture of his little phone. But I'll show you his pictures different. But they actually brought in some of the kids that some of our money went to allow them to be able to go into school. And they really want to show us that. And these were middle schoolers, and they were typical middle schoolers. The boys and the girls giggled at each other, but they wouldn't like stand next to each other. And I don't know what all he was saying to them right here. I'm not sure if he was the pastor. He was the principal of their school. He was also the pastor of the church. But he's telling them that he was making sure they understood that they got to come to school because some church in Mississippi had sent them the tuition to get there. So we prayed with them, and they took a picture with me because Brother Tim wanted them. He told them something about how we had, wanted them to know the Lord, wanted them to get their education, to get there. And they wanted to take a picture with me because I was a youth guy. But they were very, very appreciative, very appreciative. And they were in a place where, once you get to the 7th, 8th, 9th grade, you've got games that you can get into. You can go work in the fields, or you can do some kind of menial labor. But if you want to have a chance, then you got to go to school. And these were privileged. And they did say thank you, Brewer Baptist Church, but again, I don't have the audio on here. That's about it. I did see this interesting picture, the Ford truck going here. There's some saran wrapped up coffins just down the road. But this is their classrooms and stuff. So all that to say is that remember the Tim, this is so weird. We had so many plans. And this pandemic, we didn't go to church for how many weeks? The day we got back, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is when we had that meeting. The ones that run, I think it was the long-range planning committee, and we said, okay, are we going to have ladies night out or not? Are we going to have church Sunday or not? The whole world changed since then. But what didn't change was the devil didn't change, and death didn't change, and the gospel didn't change. And there's still people in Brewer, there's still people in Guatemala, there's still people all over the world who are living and dying and going to hell or heaven. And just because of the pandemic, the gospel still needs to go out. And I don't have the answer how we all need to do that or hop on a plane. Brother Tim did tell me this week that E3 volunteers is finally opening back up to allow missionaries to come back in again. It's been 6 months they've been down. Brother Kevin, the young guy right here in the corner, he actually came down with coronavirus. Of course, he's young. He fought off pretty well. He's fine now. But it's a real thing, a worldwide pandemic it is. But I don't want that to kill our reality that the world still needs the gospel. Whatever we need to do, we get the trip up and go, or we can send some more money. And again, my heart is this: we have to do something. It hasn't got to be Guatemala. It can be China. It can be Africa. But we have to do something as Christians. Not we as Brewer. We as Christians, we have to do something to reach the world. At least that's the impression I got from the Word of God. And there's 1,000 ministries, and there's 1,000 good ministries. But here's one that we are connected with. I don't know why two rednecks from Raymond, Tennessee met up one day, but Brother Tim knows Brother David. And I know Brother David because some kind of way his kids went to Moore. We had a connection with him he didn't know about at the time. I'm saying there's 1,000 things we can do. We got to do something. And here's one way we could. So I've done a poor job of presenting this, I know, And these are just pictures from places you've never been, that you don't know these people. But we should pray of how we can reach the world better, whether that's giving a whole lot more money to the Baptist Association because they do good ministry, or whether that's this or that. I'm just saying we can do more. I can do more with my personal finances. So maybe this will be one of them, and Brother Tim will do a better job when he gets over this, is presenting his side of it and the ministry side of it, more the biblical side of it. But I just want to show you my heart. I was impressed on it. And I saw places where our youth could serve and where the gospel could be real to them and not just something they do on Sundays. Because the gospel, what keeps people engaged in the gospel is seeing the gospel work. It's not fairy tales that you put the book down and say, and they all live happily ever after, and you close the book and you go to sleep. This is not a fairy tale. We have a God with power, a God that is needed, and a God that can move. And sometimes we get so cold to that in the Bible Belt because everybody grew up in church and they know the Lord already, and they've already made their decision of accept or reject. But He's still powerful. He's still moving in places in the world, and they still love Jesus in other places. And it was very special to me to go to these places where I couldn't speak their language. But they knew Jesus. They could say Jesus, and I could say Jesus. And I found, hey, this is my brother. And there's opportunity for more brothers. But anyways, I want to finish with that again. The Great Commission says go to all the world. But I just want you to know that I'm a Mississippi boy. I can't even get out of Lee County. I just don't like to leave. But I was impressed in my heart with these people. And I'm going to try to go back. I don't know how or when, especially this pandemic, but I'm going to try to go back. And I would love to, if any of you are interested in how to go, we'll try to go together. And if it's not a worldwide thing, I'm going to try to go back. And that's all I can say, is I'm going to try to go back. It moved in my heart. So if you feel moved in there for more information about it, I can probably give you more information than I've done in this poor 40 minutes up here. But I thank y'all for sending this. We remember the 10-minute bad dime. I may have paid some money for the first day we got there. We bought some for Guatemalan KFC. It was pretty good. But y'all took care of that, and the missions, the Lee County missions took care of that. So I appreciate you sending me to wake me up to what I can do. I guess we'll have an invitation after this. I know I haven't been a huge altar call or need to be saved, but if the Lord puts something in your heart, for any reason, the Lord will speak to you in 100 ways, but I ask that you would handle your business with Him as I'll take a break and do this again in a few minutes. But I thank you for listening. So Lord, thank you for this day. I thank you for Mississippi and for Brewer Baptist Church and the ministry you've given us here. And I thank that you had me here and you hadn't sent me to Guatemala full time, where you might send me somewhere else. But I thank that you have sent others. And I think that we have the opportunity, whether financially or in person, or for a week a year, for a week every 2 years, or for a few days, whatever it is, we can help. But you got people that are there all the time. They're fighting a good fight for you. And I think that somebody fought a good fight here. You got the gospel to me. And I thank you for what you've done in my life. And I thank you for my friends here in my Sound of My Voice, Lord, who have supported me and my family and supported Brother Tim on our mission trip. And I just ask that you bless us with that and guide us in the way we can be more fruitful from your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
We'll sing 480 in your book only. As you stand.
I'm not going to stand down front. Most important thing you can do in your life is do what God wants you to do. If He wants you to go down to the altar and pray, you do that. If you need to talk to somebody, somebody